Hello. Today we have Tejaswi here from the class of 23 MBAEx IIMC, and I'm so happy and proud to present Tejaswi, who's been in the nuclear industry for nearly a decade, and perhaps that makes Tejaswi the best person to talk about the burning topic today, net zero and supply chain in firms. Before we start, Tejaswi, why not share your experience in this particular industry?
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much for the introduction. I have basically worked with the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board for the past 10 years. To give you a perspective of what the nuclear energy industry in general is, we have broadly three categories. One is design, basically the people who design the structure, systems and components for establishing nuclear reactors, operating nuclear reactors and so on. Then we have the operators of the nuclear reactors, and then we have the regulators for the nuclear industry.
Okay.
So I was part of the regulatory group. How the basic vision and mission of the organization is to ensure that there is no undue risk of nuclear usage towards public, environment and people, public and the environment. How we do that is by means of regulatory review and inspections. So I was part of a group that supported the regulatory review through analysis. I also have a flavor of on-site inspections. I also was stationed at some plants during critical, hold points. This gives good insight into what the energy industry is about, and not only the nuclear energy industry in general. One thing that is unique about the energy industry is that some of the facets, such as energy generation, heat generation, the turbine part and the electricity part, is all common to most of them. The one thing that is unique to nuclear energy industry is that it's a very high stake industry.
Okay.
So professionals from these have a high risk benefit kind of knowledge. They have very deep insights into the safety systems that are in place to prevent any accidents from happening. Also, there is an inherent safety culture that is imbibed into such professionals that they work. Fundamentally, I worked in the past 10 years. I worked on project management. We built projects from the ground up. I used to work in simulation and analysis of various postulated events that could go wrong, and then what will happen and which safety systems will get triggered and the adequacy of such systems and so on. Some of my best moments in the industry were when we conducted collaborative research with the operators, the nuclear operators, and some of those solutions really actually impacted in the nuclear reactor. And when one such project culminated, we built a project from the ground up which culminated into one of the research facilities, one unique research facilities in South India, the first of its kind, which was a fire test facility.
Okay.
So I after having this much experience, and it's not that nuclear proponents have said it, many people have said this, the nuclear energy industry as such plays a very important role in achieving the energy targets that are coming up, the net zero targets that we talk about these days, that are going to come up towards 2050 or 2070 or so on.
Okay, here I have a question. Okay. Why are the firms, and I mean the corporate firms, so interested in net zero and the subsequent interest in people like you with these kinds of professional backgrounds?
Ma'am, I think what started off as just ESG and cutting down on carbon emissions has now become a fundamental change as people and countries are starting to realize that climate change is happening and we need to stop it. So it is really great to see that countries are coming together to set ambitious targets towards achieving these goals. And towards achieving these targets, people, the firms, be it consulting, operations, or supply chain, or these kind of people will require some industry insights which are gained only through experience.
Okay.
And when they are complemented with some of the managerial skills that are required in such courses as MBAEx, it becomes very important and it has a great value for such industries, because they need to ultimately find solutions to say, to implement better energy efficiency in supply chains or some such things.
Okay. Since you've mentioned supply chain a number of times, so here's the important question again. What kind of contributions can be made with net zero and supply chain in these firms in terms of skill sets, or in terms of what's happening currently in the current context, or in general, the way the academia is talking about these things, predicting where the future is going to go? Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, ma'am. Just to put things in perspective, I'm going to talk about the supply chain and why it is so important towards achieving these targets.
Perfect. Yeah.
There is something called scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions.
Okay.
Scope 1 is the CO2 that is basically generated from operations within your company. Okay. Scope 2 is those emissions that come from either usage of electricity or heat generation or cooling or such things. Scope 3 is the upstream and downstream processes, which are the supply chains that your suppliers or your distributors. What happens, there is a large disparity that is observed between the carbon dioxide emissions or the carbon emissions in scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. The scope 3 is quite high. Scope 1, scope 2 are just the tip of the iceberg. If you see, scope 3 emissions are the larger part for most customer facing industries. There are many examples in the global scenario right now. What I can give you and how this can be tackled, for example, is given by the case study of a major wind turbine manufacturer, who has achieved 20,000 tons of CO2 abatement per year basis, on a year basis, which is a huge amount. So how they do that is, first, they identify the barriers. Ultimately, to achieve a goal, everyone will see a cost-based approach. So if they are not seeing, if they are seeing a high cost in achieving the target, they will probably not take it that seriously. So they identified such barriers, and we also see that implementation of these net zero targets are not reflecting so much in the regulations that are being are there in the global scenario right now. So, but one good thing is that industries right now are asking their suppliers, as a customer, they are asking their suppliers to maybe give their sustainability report, what their emissions are, where their raw materials are coming from, and how much CO2 is being generated in their processes. This helps, but it is still not at that stage where suppliers really take it seriously, and unless they take it seriously, the scope 3 emissions will not come down. What we can do in this regard, and what the wind turbine manufacturer did as per their report, is they started off with a basic approach. They started their suppliers to ask their suppliers where their emissions are coming from and so on. When that matured, they went to the next step, saying if you don't meet the sustainability targets, if you don't meet the emission targets that we require, maybe we will not buy from you. That is the transactional approach. The third approach is actually going on to integrate and use our experience, the company's experience, in implementing our targets in them. So we work collaboratively. That's a collaborative approach, and that works best. So we also see that right now the key drivers for achieving this net zero in supply chain are there is an increasing stakeholder awareness. People are realizing that we really need to act on it. Governments are taking it seriously. Regulations are also going to come in, and private capital mobilization has really picked up. If you see the green bonds that have been issued in the last couple of years, I think in 2021 it was about 7 billion, which is a 50% increase over the previous year, and which is another 50% over the previous year. So that is also, people are starting to take this seriously. We also have a customer demand for sustainability. I'll give you an example. People are asking questions about, retail or your e-commerce or firms that are delivering small packages to your homes.
Yeah.
You have a green label printed on it saying, you return this carton to us, we'll take it back.
That.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we do that, it obviously reduces our emissions, and we, that's called the circular economy, where we make best use of natural resources that are there. So which again helps in cutting down emissions. So I think the action points are to see an end-to-end transparency in the supply chain, which can be done through by including your suppliers into your game, which is like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. So an end-to-end supply chain which will optimize both your demand and supply, which your supply chain basically, and which will also help you know where emissions are coming from and target them and reduce them further. The second thing is, right now cutting down emissions is not incentivized. So we don't have a special rate for, if you offer a special rate for low carbon products, for example, suppliers will be forced to give us such products. Suppose the government introduces some policies in which taxes are maybe a bit lesser for green products. So that will also help us do this. And then, when we get such kind of things, we have to review such successes and then scale them to the larger processes. The major industries that contribute to this are, the food industry, cement, construction, agriculture, the power sector. Such sectors need a lot of study, in-depth study, and I think that's what my insight is into.
Wow. So this was Tejaswi from the class of 23 MBAEx IMC, and one final line for all the viewers.
So basically what we're talking about is what skill sets maybe companies will require. Martin Baum, one of the board members of Daimler, recently said, you need to put your money where your mouth is, and a lot of money is going in to achieve these targets, and there is a lot of job scopes, job opportunities, and retraining opportunities that are available in the market, because net zero is going to be a major target for industries in the future. So what skills that may be required to achieve the targets that we just discussed are, one of them is data driven decision making, data analytics, which is a very important thing. Every job requirement has that. And then we have the energy insights, key energy insights, which can be offered by gaining experience in the energy industry and so on. And you also need to understand risk analysis. So basically, growth, achieving this target can happen only if the net zero targets and profitability go together. And for this, you will have to understand the end-to-end supply chain and the skills that I just mentioned.
Thank you, and wish you all the best, and looking forward to more strategies for net zero and profit and circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.